From little embarrassing mix-ups with small consequences all the way to big blunders, some of which have catastrophic results. Here are the top 10 shameful moments that history tried to forget. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Library of Alexandria. The loss of this library truly is one of the greatest losses we have had as humans. This library is famed because it held a collection of over 1 million scrolls, which are said to have been all of the written works in the world at the time. The library was founded in 300 BC, and it was where the scholars of the time would come to study. It is said that when a person visited the library, they needed to give over any books they had so that they could be copied and added to the collection of the library. It isn't exactly clear what it was that destroyed the library, but rumors range from Julius Caesar accidentally setting it on fire to an invasion that set it ablaze. At the end of the day, the building burned and everything in it was destroyed, and to this day, no one has really been held responsible. Not that that would lessen the tragedy of the situation. What was in that building was absolutely priceless, and we can only guess as to what secrets it held. Unfortunately, many of what was in the library wasn't written anywhere else, so it's destined to stay a mystery, and it still goes down in history as the single greatest loss of knowledge in the world ever. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Lifeboats. The Titanic is certainly one of the most well-known ocean-related tragedies, and for a fair reason. At the time of the Titanic's sinking, it was carrying around 2,208 passengers. That's obviously quite a fair amount of people. Want to know how many lifeboats they had? 20. With an additional 4 that were collapsible. I think some quick math can show us all how insane that is. This was only enough for half of the passengers if they had time to launch them all, which they didn't, and having such a low stock of lifeboats was actually a decision that was made consciously. Apparently, before the ship set sail, there was a decision made to reduce the number of lifeboats on board because they didn't want to clutter the deck. They thought the Titanic was unsinkable, so surely they wouldn't need a full stock of lifeboats. Unfortunately, this decision was a regrettable one because it is very possible that those extra lifeboats could have saved way more lives. In our number 8 spot today, we have the USS William D Porter. This one isn't really so much of a moment and more so a collection of kind of hilarious and embarrassing moments from the career of the World War II destroyer, the USS William D Porter. The trouble started before the boat even left the dock. Apparently, someone forgot to raise the anchor all the way up, which meant that as they slowly backed up, they also dragged the anchor along the tied-up deck of their sister ship. Just imagine working on the ship and just sitting there watching it rip through the sides, the railings, the lifeboats, just so much stuff on one of your other ships. Shortly after this, because of a failure to disarm their anti-submarine weapons, a live depth charge, which is just like a huge bomb that can sink down to get the other submarines, so one of those just falls onto the deck into the ocean while the president is on board. And it exploded. Okay, so a huge explosion in the ocean, of course, sets off the sonar on every single ship, which leads to all the other ships trying to track this one down while also doing evasive maneuvers, and those on board the USS William D Porter needed to get the heck out of there because they had the president with them. The rest of the career of this ship involves almost accidentally killing the president again, and they also ended up firing a shell at the base commander's house. Again, on accident. All in all, this ship seemed to just be doomed to live a life full of embarrassing mistakes. In the end, the ship was taken out by an airplane that had already crashed. Luckily, the ship sank without loss of any of the crew, though. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Despite it being such a huge tourist attraction, the Leaning Tower of Pisa was never meant to lean. The tower is the freestanding bell tower of the cathedral of the Italian city of Pisa, and it is known throughout the world. The foundation of the tower is said to have been built on a clay mixture that simply wasn't strong enough for the tower, which has led to the weight of it pulling the structure downward. Instead of fixing it when they first realized, they apparently just decided to stop construction for 100 years, hoping that it would just sort itself out. I love that should be good mentality. Well, it was not good. 100 years later, when construction resumed, they tried to fix the lean by making one side of the top floor taller than the other, but this just made the lean worse. By 1990, the tilt was 5.5 degrees, which led to work in both 1993 and 2001 being done in order to stabilize the tower, which ended up reducing the tilt back down to a better, but still slightly unnerving 3.97 degrees. While the tower is certainly not what it set out to be, I think accidentally creating one of the world's largest tourist attractions is still pretty cool. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Posthumous Execution. Okay, so this is something that has actually happened more than once, but I just found out it's happened at all, and I am both slightly confused and absolutely disgusted at the idea, so I needed to share one example with you guys. So, there was a man named Oliver Cromwell who Wikipedia describes as, quote, an English general and statesman who, first as a subordinate and later as commander-in-chief, led armies of the Parliament of England against King Charles I during the English Civil War, subsequently ruling the British Isles as Lord Protector from 1653 until his death in 1658. So, in 1658, Oliver passed away fairly suddenly, and his son Richard became Lord Protector, but because he had no power base in Parliament or the army, he had to resign just the following year, which effectively ended the Protectorate. Since there was no clear leadership during this time, George Monk was able to have the Long Parliament restored. He then made some slight constitutional adjustments so that Charles II could be invited back from exile in 1660 and actually be a king again under the restored monarchy. So then on January 30th, 1661, on what was the 12th anniversary of the execution of King Charles I, Oliver's body was exhumed and executed posthumously. They killed a dead guy. I get that it's like symbolic, but it's also a little redundant, don't we think? Anyway, his head was cut off and displayed outside of Westminster Hall until 1685. Afterwards, it had a series of different owners, which only adds to the oddity of this story. It is said that the head is now buried beneath the floor of the antechapel at Sidney Sussex College in Cambridge and has been there since 1960. The exact location is not public knowledge, but there is a plaque that is said to mark its approximate location. Imagine just like having a head around. Your friends come over and you're like, don't worry, that's just Oliver Cromwell. Long story. In our number 5 spot today, we have the games. For this one, we are throwing it back to the 67 CE Olympics. The Roman Emperor Nero was known for making bribes, and one of the first is believed to be the bribe that allowed him to compete in the games, which used to only be limited to Greeks. Nero certainly wasn't trying to hide his bribery or cheating, however, as the most blatant example of it was when he competed in the 4-horse chariot race with 10 horses. You'd think they would have tried to just be like a little more covert, but I guess not. This isn't even the end of it though, considering it is believed that he fell from the chariot and didn't even finish the event. Imagine bribing your way in, cheating immensely, and then still being so bad you can't even finish the race. This somehow isn't even the end of the story, however, as he was still named as the winner. I'm not sure what's shadier, trying to hide your cheating or bribing your way to victory, or not trying to hide it at all. Either way, I'm glad this story survived all these years because it truly is just unbelievable. I kind of feel bad for everyone else who had to compete that year though. Literally, there was no way you could have won, even if you did. With 4 horses. In our number 4 spot today, we have Operation Cottage. This operation was a tactical maneuver which completed the Aleutian Islands campaign in World War II, and it was a joint services assault on the island of Kiska. On August 15, 1943, Allied military forces landed on the island with the aim to eliminate the Imperial Japanese forces that had occupied the island since June 1942. Unbeknownst to the Allied forces, however, the Japanese forces had secretly abandoned the island 2 weeks earlier under the cover of thick fog using submarines and ships. So basically what I'm saying is that when the Allied forces landed here, they were unopposed. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that no one lost their lives, however. There were around 313 casualties, which were a result of stray Japanese landmines, vehicle accidents, and mostly a series of friendly fire incidents. Most of the friendly fire incidents were between Canadian and American troops as they mistook each other for Japanese forces as they had come from opposite sides of the island. In our number 3 spot today, we have Laika. On this list today, we've had a fair share of embarrassing little tidbits, all the way to small mistakes that had major devastating consequences, and I'd say this is one moment that was thought through and planned out, so it certainly wasn't a mistake. It was just a decision made without conscience, or with some serious moral complications. Laika was a stray dog who was taken from the streets of Moscow and selected to be the occupant of the Soviet spacecraft Sputnik 2 that was launched into low orbit on November 3rd, 1957. She became one of the first animals in space and became the first animal to orbit Earth. On this mission, there was no plan for her to ever be recovered or for her to even survive. Instead, the plan was to euthanize her via poison, but even this horrible plan fell through as she passed away from overheating and asphyxiation beforehand. There was little known at the time of this mission as to what spaceflight would do to living creatures, and so it was thought that animal flights were a necessary precursor to human flights. The experiment was aimed to prove that humans could endure spaceflight, and it did pave the way for future space exploration, as the mission gave data on how living organisms react to spaceflight, which has definitely gone on to give extremely valuable insights to researchers and scientists. It is a horribly sad story, and it leaves many people with a lot of questions. There's no doubt that the mission gave us tons of information that has truly helped in terms of sending humans to space, but at what cost? Let's have some civil, level-headed discussions in the comments about this one. I'm interested to hear everyone's thoughts and feelings about this. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Orbiter. The Mars Climate Orbiter was a robotic space probe that was launched by NASA in 1998 in order to study the Martian climate and the Martian atmosphere. Unfortunately, in 1999, all communication with the spacecraft was lost because it ended up on a trajectory that flew it way too close to the planet. Its fate either left it destroyed in the atmosphere, or it escaped the planet's vicinity and ended up orbiting around the sun. Once an investigation into how this happened occurred, it was discovered that it was due to mismatched measurements between the two software systems, as NASA was using SI units while Martin Lockheed, who created one piece of ground software, used United States customary units. Yeah, they just used half of one measurement and half the other. At least when I screw up at my job, I don't waste billions of dollars, I just have to read comments about it. See you down there. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Battle of Karansebes. In the Battle of Karansebes, which occurred in 1788, the Austrians were at war with the Ottomans, and they sent out scouts which were tasked with searching for Turkish spies. These scouts ended up encountering a group of Romani people, and they all ended up having a bit of a party together. Everyone's getting loose, everyone's having a good time, and then a group from the Austrian infantry show up, and they just want to join in on the fun, but these scouts, who were already a little too loose, they got all possessive and weird and decided to build a barricade around the alcohol and set up a defense. From here, the infantry continued to press on, and a shot was fired. That is when a fight erupted, and the Austrian army began to mistake the scouts who were fleeing as Turks, which then led to them opening fire. Then things erupted even further because the rest of the Romani people figured that they were being attacked, of course, and they also started shooting and fleeing. This basically led to the Austrian army taking the lives of 10,000 of their own men because they accidentally attacked themselves. To make matters even worse for them, when the Turks actually arrived the next day, the Austrian army was easily defeated because they had basically already defeated themselves, and they claimed the city of Karansebes. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you all next time. Bye! On February— what? It's literally not February at all. On August 15th. Why did I just say February? I can't laugh. It's the war. On August 15th, Okay.